Sophia Bennett stared at the invitation that had arrived that morning, her coffee growing cold beside it. The elegant script announced a charity gala hosted by Richardson Enterprises. Her stomach tightened. 5 years had passed since she'd heard that name spoken aloud in her apartment, yet it still held the power to unravel her carefully constructed composure. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" asked Olivia, her roommate, peering over her shoulder. Sophia traced the embossed lettering with her fingertip. Of course not. Probably just ended up on their mailing list somehow. But the truth was more complicated. Sophia had built a respectable career as an environmental consultant, and her firm had recently partnered with several high-profile corporations on sustainability initiatives. Her boss would expect her to attend and network. Across the city, Daniel. Richardson reviewed quarterly reports in his penthouse office, the skyline of Seattle stretching out before him. At 35, he had transformed his father's struggling company into a tech empire. Business journals celebrated him as a visionary. His investment portfolio was diverse and thriving. By all accounts, he had everything. The final guest list. "For Saturday's gala needs your approval," his assistant Jasmine said from the doorway. Daniel waved dismissively. "Whatever Ethan in PR thinks is best. There's one name I thought you might want to be aware of." Jasmine hesitated. "Sophia Bennett's firm is on the list." The pen in Daniel's hand stilled. He kept his expression neutral, despite the sudden hammering in his chest. "It's a big event. She probably won't even attend." After Jasmine left, Daniel opened his desk drawer and removed a small velvet box he'd kept for 5 years. The engagement ring he'd never had the chance to give Sophia before everything fell apart. For his pride and her independence had collided catastrophically. For accusations of betrayal and career ambitions had driven them apart. He'd dated. Casually since then, but nothing serious. His friends joked that he was married to his work. What they didn't understand was that success had been his refuge from the emptiness Sophia had left behind. Sophia hung up after another call with her boss. She was definitely expected to attend the gala. Sighing, she opened her closet and pushed aside everyday work clothes until she found the midnight blue gown she'd worn to her cousin's wedding last year. It would have to do. "What would you even say to him if you saw him?" Olivia asked later that evening. Sophia shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Nothing important. The part of my life is over." But as she lay awake that night, Sophia wondered if some endings were really just unfinished beginnings waiting for the right moment to continue their story. The Westbrook Hotel ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the shimmer of designer gowns. Sophia entered with her colleague Thomas, grateful for his steady presence beside her. She had almost backed out twice that day, inventing emergencies and deadlines. But ultimately, her professional responsibility had won out. "Impressive turnout," Thomas commented, accepting 2 champagne flutes from a passing server and handing one to Sophia. "Half the tech world is here." Sophia nodded absently, her eyes scanning the room despite her best intentions not to look for him. Then the crowd shifted, and there he was. Daniel stood across the ballroom in conversation with an older gentleman, looking more handsome than she remembered in his tailored tuxedo. His dark hair was shorter now, with threads of silver at the temples that somehow made him more distinguished. When he smiled at something his companion said, Sophia felt a familiar ache bloom in her chest. "Earth to Sophia." Thomas waved his hand before her face. "You okay?" "Fine," she mumbled, just overwhelmed by the crowd. On the opposite side of the room, Daniel's longtime friend and business partner Vincent nudged him discreetly. "Don't look now, but your ex just walked in." Daniel's shoulders tensed. "I know. I saw her." "You're the one who approved the guest list," Vincent reminded him. "What's your plan? To be a professional and focus on raising money for children's education," Daniel replied, though his gaze drifted back to Sophia. She wore a midnight blue dress that made her look like a piece of the night sky had descended among them. Her chestnut hair was longer than when they were together, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. The evening progressed with speeches and auction announcements. Sophia managed to avoid direct contact with Daniel for nearly an hour, positioning herself strategically behind groups of people whenever he moved in her direction. But fate intervened when she stepped onto a secluded terrace for fresh air. Sophia. His voice still affected her, the same way like a tuning fork struck against her bones. She turned slowly, composing her features into what she hoped was a look of mild surprise. Daniel, congratulations on the success of your event. He approached cautiously, stopping at a respectful distance. I wasn't sure you'd come. Professional obligation, she explained, lifting her glass slightly. Your company's environmental initiatives overlap with my firm's work, right? He nodded. How have you been? Such a simple question to carry the weight of 5 years of absence.
Good.
Busy. You know how it is. She gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings. Clearly you've been successful. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and memories of easier conversations. Sophia, Daniel began, just as the terrace doors opened and Vincent appeared. Sorry to interrupt, but you're needed for the main auction announcement. Daniel looked torn. We'll catch up later. Sophia nodded automatically, though she fully intended to make her escape while he was occupied. One conversation was enough to confirm what she already knew seeing. Daniel Richardson still hurt too much. The auction proceeded with wealthy attendees bidding astronomical amounts for luxury experiences. Sophia watched Daniel command the room. With easy confidence, so different from the ambitious, but somewhat reserved man she'd known, she wondered how much of that change had happened after she left. He keeps looking at you, Thomas whispered, making her jump. Don't be ridiculous, she muttered, though she'd noticed it too the way. Daniel's eyes found her repeatedly throughout his speech, when the formal proceedings concluded and the band began playing. Sophia decided it was time to leave. She'd fulfilled her professional obligation and had the business cards to prove it. She made her excuses to Thomas and headed toward the exit, weaving through clusters of guests. Leaving so soon? Daniel had materialized beside her, his hand lightly touching her elbow. The contact sent an electric current through her body that she immediately resented. I have an early meeting tomorrow, she lied. One dance, he said, his voice low, for old time's sake. Against her better judgment, Sophia allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist, familiar yet foreign. As they moved to the music, memories flooded back their first date at a hole-in-the-wall jazz club. Dancing in his apartment with no music at all, the last night before everything fell apart. Remember that terrible dancing class we took? Daniel asked, his voice tentative. Sophia couldn't help smiling. The instructor almost kicked us out, 'cause someone kept stepping on my feet, he teased. Because someone kept trying to lead when he was supposed to follow, she countered. For a moment, it was easy again. Then reality intruded. Why did you invite me tonight, Daniel? His expression grew serious. I didn't plan to. When I saw your name on the list, I couldn't bring myself to remove it. The music shifted to a slower tempo, forcing them closer. Daniel's call-in's still the same after all these years wrapped around her senses. Do you ever think about that night, he asked quietly? Sophia stiffened. The night everything ended. The night she'd found evidence of what she thought was his betrayal mails, suggesting he'd used her environmental research to help his company outmaneuver a competitor she'd been working with. The night he'd accused her of not trusting him enough to ask for his side of the story before walking away. Sometimes, she admitted. I never got to explain. It doesn't matter now, she interrupted. We were different people. Daniel stopped, dancing, his hand still holding her. What if I told you it wasn't what you thought? Those emails were taken out of context? Sophia stepped back, breaking their connection. 5 years later, does it change anything? Around them, other couples continued dancing, oblivious to the emotional minefield they navigated. It changes everything, Daniel said, an intensity in his eyes that made her heart race, because I never stopped loving you. The words hung between them, dangerous and alluring. Sophia took another step back, bumping into a waiter who nearly dropped his tray of champagne. You can't say things like that, she whispered fiercely after apologizing to the waiter. Not here? Not now? When? Then? Daniel's frustration was evident. You've ignored every attempt I've made to contact you over the years. This was news to Sophia. What attempts? It's the letters I sent to your old address. The messages I left with your former assistant before you changed firms. Sophia shook her head in confusion. I never received any letters or messages. A look of realization crossed Daniel's face. Your friend Olivioshi never liked me. You were still living with her when we broke up. The implication hung in the air. Yet Olivia intercepted his attempts to reach out. The possibility made Sophia's head spin. Before she could process this new information, Vincent approached with an elegant older woman in tow. Daniel, Mrs. Harrington, wants to discuss her donation, Vincent said, giving Sophia an apologetic smile. Daniel looked trapped. Can you give me 5 minutes, Vincent? It's fine, Sophia said quickly. I really should go. She turned and walked rapidly toward the exit, mind racing. If what Daniel suggested was true, if Olivia had hidden his attempts to explain ... no, it was too painful to consider. Too complicated to unravel after all this time, she had retrieved her wrap from the coat check and was waiting for the valet to bring her car when Daniel's voice rang out across the hotel lobby. Sophia, wait. She turned to see him striding toward her, ignoring the curious stares of nearby guests. When he reached her, he was slightly out of breath. Please, don't leave yet. Daniel, this is inappropriate. There are people watching. I don't care. Ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she remembered well. 5 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life by letting you walk away without fighting for us. Sophia glanced around uncomfortably. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place, he interrupted. To her horror, he lowered himself to one knee, right there in the middle of the hotel lobby. Gasps and murmurs erupted around them as onlookers recognized the famous tech mogul. She hissed, mortified. Daniel looked up at her. Vulnerability raw on his face, something I should have done years ago. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I've carried this with me every day since I bought it for you 5 years ago. The box opened to reveal a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds, exactly the style she'd once mentioned preferring over traditional diamond solitaires. Sophia Bennett, I have built an empire, but it means nothing without you, my greatest. Regret isn't losing a business deal or missing an investment opportunity, it's losing you. I'm asking for one chance to explain, to make things right. Will you give us that chance? Time seemed suspended as Sophia stared at the ring, at Daniel kneeling before her, at the circle of strangers, watching with romantic anticipation. Her mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, 1,000 potential futures branching from this moment. Please stand up, she said quietly. The hope in Daniel's eyes dimmed, but he obeyed, closing the ring box and slipping it back into his pocket. Not here, Sophia continued, surprising them both. We need to talk, but not as a spectacle for strangers. Relief washed over his face. He nodded and gestured toward a hallway leading away from the lobby. My office is in this building. We can talk privately there. Minutes later, they stood in a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Neither sat down. You've been carrying that ring for 5 years? Sophia asked finally. Daniel nodded. I was going to propose the weekend we broke up, as the confession landed heavily between them. Sophia moved to the window, needing distance too. Think clearly. You said something about letters, about trying to explain. What was there to explain, Daniel? I saw those emails. You used my research? I never used your research, he interrupted. Those emails were about implementing similar sustainability protocols in our own company, inspired by your work. Not stealing or undermining anything. Sophia turned to face him. Then why didn't you just tell me that when I confronted you? Because you accused me of betraying you without giving me a chance to explain. You assumed the worst about me. The old hurt was evident in his voice. My pride couldn't take that you thought so little of me. They stood in silence, the weight of 5 years of misunderstanding pressing on them both. I should have asked for your explanation, Sophia admitted finally. I was scared. Things were getting serious between us, and part of me was looking for an escape. Why would you want to escape? She gave a sad smile. Because I was falling too deeply in love with you. It terrified me how much power you had over my happiness. Daniel crossed the room slowly, stopping just before her. And now I'm wondering if we've both spent 5 years punishing ourselves for one mistake. He reached for her hand and this time she didn't pull away. What if we start over? Not from the beginning, we can't erase our history, but from this moment forward. It's not that simple, Sophia said, though her fingers intertwined with his. We're different people. Now, then let's get to know who we've become. Daniel's thumb traced circles on her palm. No grand gestures, no public proposals, just dinner tomorrow night. Private conversation between two people with unfinished business. Sophia looked into the eyes she'd never truly forgotten. One dinner, she agreed cautiously. One dinner became two. Then weekly dates that stretched into the early hours of morning as they relearned each other. The differences in who they'd become only made their connection richer. Daniel's success had softened his driving ambition, while Sophia's career had given her the confidence she'd once lacked. 3 months after the gala, they sat in the same jazz club where they'd had their first date years ago. When Daniel reached across the table, it wasn't with a ring, but with a key. "Move in with me," he said simply. "Not because of our past, but because I love who you are now, and I want to build a future with you." Sophia took the key, her heart full. "I think we needed those 5 years apart," she mused, "to become people who could truly appreciate what we have." Daniel smiled, raising his glass in a toast. 2 second chances and to getting them right this time. As the jazz quartet played softly in the background, Sophia leaned across the table and kissed the man she'd never stopped loving. Grateful that some endings were merely intermissions before the story continued, richer and more beautiful than before.